So if you're tuning in today, you've probably heard the term financial independence, FI,
Right.
and you're likely ready to jump straight into the technical stuff. You want to know, okay, which index fund should I buy?
Or where do I find the best real estate deals? What's the exact math for the 4% withdrawal rate? All that.
All of that. And what we're going to explore today is why that is counterintuitively the absolute wrong place to start.
It really is. If you begin with the spreadsheets, you're missing the entire forest for the formulas.
Exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive into material that argues the whole quest for FI isn't fundamentally a calculation at all.
No, it's a radical shift. A shift in psychology and in strategy.
We are unpacking this incredibly robust 3-stage, 13-step framework. It was developed by Tamir Hachem, who is an engineer that completely pivoted his life. He's also the official Hebrew translator of The Richest Man in Babylon.
And that background is so important because it merges this practical, systematic engineering mindset with this very deep, almost philosophical financial wisdom.
So our mission for you today is to cut through all the noise of the get-rich-quick schemes. We're going to focus on the absolute beginning, the strategic architecture.
And specifically, we need to get to the bottom of his foundational principle. Why changing your fundamental financial identity is, well, he argues it's a mandatory precondition for any effective financial action.
The roadmap he laid out, it's called the Golden Path to Financial Independence, and it's built on this crucial reordering of priorities. It just flips conventional wisdom on its head.
It does. Most people are focused on accumulating the maximum amount of wealth right now.
Immediately. But Hachem insists on, and this is a quote, financial independence first, then wealth.
Which means we're looking at a system that demands you build a secure, stable, sort of defensive base
Before you go on the attack.
before you ever go on the offensive for that massive growth. And that whole journey, it begins in the mind, not the market.
Okay, let's unpack this foundational pivot then, because Hachem's personal story makes this change so relatable.
It really does.
We're talking about a man who, like millions of us, worked as a salaried engineer until he was 60, a successful one at that.
Right. And for decades, he operated completely within that default economic structure. The belief that your income comes only from your salary.
The classic time for money exchange.
Exactly. He was highly successful in that world, which I think makes this story even more compelling. He had a good salary. Everything looked fine on the outside. But he was still trapped in what we call the employee identity.
His entire financial world was built on trading his most finite resource.
His time.
His time for money. And crucially, in the source material, he points out that for most of that time, a concept like financial independence, it wasn't just a distant goal.
It was non-existent.
It was non-existent in his mental reality. He didn't just not know how to get there. He didn't even operate with the assumption that it was possible for him.
And that, right there, is the core of the employee identity. It's viewing money as something you receive from an outside source, your employer, in exchange for your work.
Instead of something you create.
Or own through systems that you build. It's a profound difference.
So what was the catalyst? What caused this seismic shift for him? He describes it happening around age 45 when he read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
And this wasn't just, another business book he skimmed on a flight. He describes it as initiating a deep change in consciousness.
That's a strong phrase.
It is. It was that powerful identity-level pivot from the employee mindset to the asset owner mindset.
This is where we need to slow down, I think, and really look at the timing of this.
Yes.
This shift in identity, this new consciousness, it happened before he had all the technical expertise, before he had a detailed vision or some complex financial plan.
It was a conscious decision about who he was going to be financially. That came first.
But wait a minute, I have to push back on that just for a second on behalf of anyone listening.
Go for it.
He was still a successful engineer, right, with a stable, high-paying salary. Doesn't that suggest his job was the primary driver that enabled all the asset building? And maybe the identity shift was just a secondary philosophical add-on?
That's a really fair challenge, and it hits on a common misconception. The salary job was, without a doubt, the necessary fuel.
Okay.
But Hachem argues, and his success shows, that the identity was the necessary engine. He's explicit about this. After the identity shift, he started acting. He started learning, reading, building income-generating assets.
Well, he was still using his salary as a financial anchor.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The salary wasn't the magic wand that created the assets. It was the stability. It was the foundation, that allowed him to confidently deploy capital and take calculated risks because he knew that safety net was there.
Ah, I see. So if he had kept that employee identity, what would have happened?
Well, the money would have likely followed the classic pattern.
Yeah.
Income goes up,
Expenses go up.
expenses go up, the lifestyle inflates, and he stays just as dependent on the next paycheck, even though it's bigger. But because he decided to become an asset owner, he saw that salary completely differently.
Not as spending money.
Not as spending money, but as capital. Capital to be deployed into income-generating systems.
That distinction, that one distinction, changes everything.
It does. You go from being an economic dependent who sells hours to an economic architect who leverages capital.
And this is where he found that critical insight, that financial actions you take without this psychological anchor.
They do not last long.
Yeah.
Think of it like this. Most people are obsessed with maximizing their return on investment, their ROI. Hodgem is saying you need to first focus on maximizing the return on identity.
That's a great way to put it. It's like that fitness analogy people always use.
Mm-hmm.
If you go on a crash diet, but you still fundamentally see yourself as someone who hates exercise and loves junk food, what happens? The second the pressure's off, the old behaviors just come flooding back.
Of course. The actions don't stick because the identity didn't actually change.
So, applied to finance, a crash investment strategy is doomed to fail if you still identify as a compulsive consumer or someone who needs that immediate gratification.
Exactly. The identity of ownership means you accept delayed gratification. You see debt as a tool or a liability, not just a way to buy more stuff. And you understand that real security, true security, it comes from assets, not from a high salary.
And that is the foundational consciousness that defines stage one of his whole system.
And you cannot skip stage one.
This sounds incredibly difficult, though. I mean, we are all socially conditioned from birth to be employees and consumers. Stage one feels like you're rewriting your own economic DNA.
It is. It's the hardest part. But once that identity is forged, once you know who you are financially, then you can build the structure to support it. And that brings us to the systematic three-stage approach of his golden path.
Okay, let's look at that structure now, and we should keep that mantra in mind. Financial independence first, then wealth. This is all very systematic, not chaotic.
The whole structure is designed to mitigate risk and to ensure you have the psychological staying power. That's why the sequence is so important. It's non-negotiable.
So stage one, as we've established, is that deep psychological work, building the foundational consciousness and economic identity. This is the concrete base everything else sits on.
And once that consciousness is secure, you can move into stage two, building financial resilience.
Resilience. Okay, this stage sounds a bit less glamorous than growth, but it feels critical. Hashem's focus here is on achieving order, stability, and control over money.
This is where you gain mastery. The function of stage two is purely defensive. It's about preparing you for the inevitable downturns that come with building assets.
So why is stability so necessary before you go for major growth?
Because building assets, whether we're talking about real estate or index funds, it takes time. And markets fluctuate. They go up, they go down. If you don't have control, order, and stability.
Meaning you've gotten rid of bad debt, you have buffers.
You've got your emergency fund exactly. Without that, a market correction will cause panic.
And panic leads to selling your assets at the worst possible time, usually at a loss, which is the ultimate failure on the path to FI.
It's the end of the journey. Stage two ensures you have the financial buffer, but also the psychological endurance to just ignore the short-term noise and stay focused on the long-term journey.
It's the moment you stop being controlled by your money and start controlling it.
It's like building that savings muscle. You're developing the strength and the control before you try to lift the heavy weights of major investing.
That's a perfect analogy. So stage two is building the concrete walls, the stable roof, and only once you have that resilient shelter can you then move into stage three.
Stage three, economic growth.
This is where that asset owner identity really starts to pay off.
Absolutely. Stage three is the intentional, strategic work of creating income not dependent on time through assets and money-generating systems.
It's the complete reversal of his starting point as an engineer.
Exactly. He started by selling time for money. In stage three, you move from earning income based on hours worked to earning income based on systems owned. The focus shifts entirely to scalable, passive, and long-term income streams.
Okay, to make this less abstract, let's look at how Haycom actually did this. You mentioned he used his salary as the anchor while building these systems.
Yes, so he was moving fluidly from the stability he built in stage two into the growth of stage three.
And his strategy was highly personalized, which I think is an important point. It shows that these systems can look very different from person to person.
Very different.
And maybe the most fascinating detail is one of the specific systems he built. It was so deeply connected to that foundational change in consciousness we talked about,
The translation.
translating the classic financial book, The Richest Man in Babylon, into Hebrew.
It's brilliant when you think about it.
Yeah.
That one action was a direct reflection of his new identity as a financial architect and an educator. And at the same time, it created a source of consistent, passive income.
A published translation is a system. It generates money completely independent of his daily time commitment. It's a perfect illustration of stage 3 in action.
It really is.
And beyond that steady, passive income from the translation, the sources detail his systematic strategy for acquiring long-term assets, specifically real estate in both Israel and the USA.
And this wasn't some solo high-risk thing either. He often acquired these properties through collaborative partnerships.
That's a key detail. That collaboration shows that stage 3 is about leveraging resources. That can mean other people's capital or their expertise to get over barriers to entry.
Right. He wasn't just sitting around waiting until he had millions saved up himself. He was creating structures, often with partners, that generated ownership.
So he was consistently taking the stabilized capital from stage 2 and deploying it to build these appreciating income-generating systems in stage 3.
Yes. And we get a very clear picture of the ultimate goal of this journey, which really reinforces that FI first, then wealth idea. The source material notes that he eventually monetized some of these assets.
He sold them.
He sold or liquidated parts of his portfolio for a very specific reason, to help his children purchase their own apartments.
Wow, that's powerful. It shows that financial independence for him, it wasn't just about his own consumption or hitting a certain retirement date. It was about creating generational stability.
Absolutely. When people just chase wealth without that FI foundation, they often risk everything on highly volatile assets, or they just consume all their gains. Hatcham built a system that was so robust, it could provide stability for 2 generations.
It really brings the whole discussion full circle. He was focused on building repeatable assets, these systems that generate money, not just chasing temporary wins.
And that mindset shift, that was the key. It allowed him to see his steady engineering salary, not as a source for paying bills and lifestyle creep,
But as capital.
as capital to deploy into stable, income-generating systems that would ultimately serve his family's long-term resilience. That systematic, disciplined approach is what defines the golden path.
Which brings us back to the primary strategic insight we want you to walk away with today. Financial success depends so much less on finding the perfect investment.
The unicorn stock, the no-money-down property.
Right. And far more on forging the right identity in stage 1 and then establishing systematic control and stability in stage 2.
If you prioritize that identity and that resilience, the growth in stage 3 becomes a predictable outcome. It's not a gamble. The framework gives you the guardrails you need to stay on the journey without burning out or collapsing during a market downturn.
We started with the mantra, and I think we should end with it. Financial independence first, then wealth. It's a roadmap. It's defined by identity and resilience.
And if we accept this framework, that effective financial action requires a psychological anchor, then the action you need to take today isn't about market research. It's about identity.
So a final thought for you to consider.
If you are an economic architect, what is one small, even trivial action you can take today to start reinforcing that new identity of ownership? Is it setting up a recurring automatic transfer of just $20? Is it reading one page of a financial book tonight? Start building the identity, and the big financial actions will follow.
We've laid out the psychological and structural foundation today. Next time, we will dive deeper into the practical steps within this powerful 3-stage framework.
We look forward to diving deeper with you.